Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my library. This is the first installment of what I have been reading this month. So if you've seen any of my other wrap-up videos for the month, you'll know that I am terrible at remembering any of the books that I've read, and usually I do a week by week wrap-up, but I've been pretty busy in the last couple of weeks, so I haven't had any time to film a wrap-up or like a weekly wrap-up or anything like that. So I am going to do a 3-week wrap-up and hope that I remember most of the books that I read. So far though, this month has been probably the best month star rating wise. I think I've read about 7 books at the moment, and I think majority of them were 5-star. So it's a good month. So before I get into it, if you could like this video, that would really help out my channel, and if you could subscribe, I would love for you to be a part of my chaotic book talking. So the first book I finished this month was Raw by Cora Carmack. I really enjoyed this book. I rated this one 4 stars, and I found that the premise of this was so intriguing. So in this book we have Aurora, who is basically being groomed to become queen of her kingdom or queendom, whatever you want to call it, and she is in a family that has like really strong lines for this like stormling power. And there are like different types of storms in the world, and there are people that have like these powers to defeat them, and you can like take the storm heart and become more powerful with that. And Aurora is under the impression that she doesn't have any powers and she can't tame any of the storms or defeat them or anything like that, but no one in her country knows that. Aurora's mother then arranges for her to marry a prince from another nearby kingdom, and basically sets her off to go do that. And she doesn't want to marry someone else, so she ends up running away. I thought that the storm powers within this is really unique and is such a good idea, and it was executed quite well. I found that the romance in this was pretty cliche and predictable, but it wasn't something that took away from the story. I definitely don't think it was like a main plot point for me, and I really just enjoyed the whole concept of this novel. So I'm really excited to read Rage and yeah, continue on with the series because I really enjoyed it. The next book I read this month was Boyfriend Material. I borrowed this one from my library and listened to it on audiobook in one day. I just like smashed it out. It was so good. I absolutely loved this story. It has everything that I love in it. So it was like enemies to lovers, like pretend boyfriends. It was just so good, and it was just yes. So basically we are following Luke, who is like a semi-celebrity. His dad is like this really famous rock star, and he's kind of known in the tabloids to be a bit inappropriate. So they're always claiming that he's drunk or on drugs or doing something irresponsible, and he kind of can't get a job anywhere except for this charity place that he seems to be really passionate about anyway. And they've basically said that his tabloids are ruining the company or like shining a bad light on them, and if he doesn't settle down then he will not be allowed to work there anymore. And I guess he kind of takes that settle down into like serious mode, because he decides to get a fake boyfriend and someone who's really quite high up, and just makes him look a little bit better. And turns out that his friend has a friend who is a judge or a barrister, and they kind of meet. They've met before, they know each other a little bit, and they didn't really hit it off to begin with. And but the story is just like enemies to lovers, like at its finest. It's so good. There was like one character in here that really annoyed me though. It was, I don't even remember his name. He works with Luke at the charity, and he's just like so weird, and I just could not understand anything that was happening when he was in the scenes. So it was really wild. So yeah, I rated this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I just which is so good. I love enemies to lovers. It's like my favourite trope of all time. After that one, I borrowed Forever Wild by K.A. Tucker from my library, and this is a novella to the simple wild and wild at heart, and it was just... Apparently this is the last book we're gonna get from these characters in this world, and it was hard saying goodbye. I absolutely love this duology and like the novella as well. I rated the novella 5 stars. It was just beautiful. It was everything I needed. I will literally read everything from Calla and John and Jonah. So it was just something that was just, yes, it did me some good. So then after that, I ended up listening to From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout on audio, and whew, this one was pretty steamy, I think. I really enjoyed the world and how things are coming to be. I'm really interested in reading the second book because it left on a very interesting part, and the plot twist was like not what I was expecting at all. So basically Poppy has been chosen from birth to be a maiden, which means that she is going to be sacrificed to the gods in order to like keep peace within the country. But it's not something that she ever actually wants to do. The whole book she's kind of trying to get herself out of it. And yeah, I think this book started off in a way that I was not expecting. It like just dove right into that adult-esque content, let me tell you. But I did really enjoy it. It was just so interesting. The world was really interesting. I loved the kind of mystery behind who was killing everyone and like who was what, and it was just like wild. I didn't actually expect there to be like vampires or like anything like that in this book, but then yep, that was a surprise to me. And then yeah, that ending, that plot twist was just, I'm still not over it. I was just like, I don't know how I didn't see it coming, but I definitely did not see it coming. So it was a good surprise. It was definitely, I rated this one 5 stars because I find that I rate books really high because of the endings, and then like I need a few days to like sit with them and change my mind. But I don't think I'm going to change my mind with this one. It was really good. This is going to be a long video because I've read so many books this month. So I read 11 Other Words by Christina Lauren right after that. This one was 5-star read. I absolutely loved it. We are following, can't remember anyone's name, who doesn't, look at that, it doesn't even have anyone's name on the front. Super helpful. So I read this book and another Christina Lauren book, and they're both like meshed into one book in my head, and that's not what it is. Okay, I'm remembering. So we're following Macy, who in the present day is about to marry a man who is safe. She's barely known him. He has a daughter. She doesn't really know much about him at all, but they're like living together and everything. And she ends up running into this guy who she used to date back when she was really young and still in high school or college and stuff like that. And they weren't together for very long, but they kind of had this childhood fling throughout most of her teenage years and growing up. And it ended up ending really badly, and they haven't talked for the last 11 years. And she still claims that he is like the love of her life and like her one true love. And when they meet, everything kind of unravels. So we do have flashbacks of the past in this, where you kind of go back and forth until you meet in the present and you kind of know where everything has left off. And this book was pretty steamy as well, I have to say. I was just like fanning myself down while I was reading this sometimes. Whew. But I really enjoyed this. I love Christina Lauren, and I just love everything that they write. So this is not going to be any different. I ended up rating this one 5 stars. I read it in one sitting. It was just so good, and I just really enjoy the male characters in their novels because they all want to talk about their feelings. They're all very open, and I just don't know anyone that is like that, and it's just so wild to me, but I absolutely love it. So this one was 5 stars. After that one, I ended up reading Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, and this one was so good. For like one of the new releases this year, it kind of was not what I expected it to be at all. This one is also kind of like an enemies to lovers, and it's just so good. I ended up like crying at the end because I was so attached to the characters. It was just like, I haven't really read that many books that is based around like Latin culture, and it was just such a breath of fresh air for me, and I really enjoyed that, and kind of like being able to connect with spirits and like help them pass over, and that was like super interesting to me. I really loved that idea. We also have diversity within this. We have a trans main character, which I absolutely adored. It was so good to see, and I find that I just loved it because sometimes isn't really, at the start he's not really accepted by his family. They're kind of finding it quite hard to come to terms with the transition, and when he meets this new boy, it's just like he's like so good. He's just like so supportive of him, and it just makes me just like warm inside. And this book was so good. Just I cannot wait to read anything else that this author writes, because it was a good book. And then the next book I read was Inner Holidays by Christina Lauren. I was feeling pretty Christmassy at the time, and I just wanted to like jump into the festive season, and this was the perfect book to do that. I absolutely love Christina Lauren. Obviously, I rated this one 5 stars. It was so good. In this book, we are following Maylin, who is reliving her Christmas holiday. Basically, the first time she lives it, she does some things that she's not really proud of, and wishes that she basically asks the universe to show her what would make her happy. And so she starts reliving the same 6 days over and over again, and it was just so good. It was so good. Basically, she is going on holiday with her family and her family friends, and she has had a crush on one of the guys from the other family basically forever, and she's never really known if she had a chance with him or if he feels the same or anything like that. And it's just like yes, everything about this book was so good. They just go to like this little family cottage, and just it's just so good. And I'm just not coherent at all today, because like everything I'm reading is so good, and I just like have all of these feelings and I don't know how to control them or like express them. So 5 stars for that one. So good. Last book I've read, Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade novel, and oh my goodness, this is so good. This is so good. I rated this one 4 stars, and basically we're following Monaghan Crow, who is a cursed child, and at the age of 11, I want to say, basically these people come and take her away and kill her because she's a curse and she's a nuisance to the world. But before that happens, there is this bid at school where people can bid on you and try and get you to come to like an apprenticeship kind of thing for like their lives. And she ends up having 4 people bid on her, which has never happened before. It's rare to even get 1 bid. Not everyone gets a bid. This man Jupiter ends up coming to take her to Nevermore, and basically she has to go through these trials to see if she can become part of their society. And it's just so good. I really just love this novel so much, and I cannot wait to read the next ones. I'm so glad I ended up picking this up, because it was one of the books I wanted to read in 2020, and I got there in the end. It just took me a whole entire year, but I got there. So yeah, this one I ended up reading 4 stars. It was fantastic. Such a good middle grade novel, and I have to say I enjoy this way more than Harry Potter. Way more. So that's anything to go by. I haven't even finished Harry Potter, and I never will, but this one is so good. Anyway, those are the 7 books that I've read in the last 3 weeks, and I guess I will see you when I finish my wrap up next week. So I will see you in like 2 seconds. Bye. So I am back with my next weekly wrap up for December, and I have read 1 book. So I think for the first like 2-3 weeks of this month I have read 7 books, but for the last couple of days I've just not been reading anything at all. It's been Christmas holidays, it's been family time, friends time, and I just have not read anything other than Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the one and only book I have read since the last update, And I have to say, I did enjoy it. I think I ended up rating like 3 or 4 stars. I don't think it's on the same pedestal that I put Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo on, or even Daisy Jones and the Six. This was more character driven than anything that I've read lately, and it wasn't really what I was expecting it to be. I thought that this would have more plot in it, and it was definitely just like a highly driven character story. So basically we are following Elsie, who is struggling with the grief and the loss of her husband. She is coming through a lot of things at the moment because of this. It's kind of like a flashback scenario as well, where we do see the past of them getting together and meeting and like their relationship over the time. But I think that the main focus for this novel is the fact that she feels like she's not justified, or she's to feel as sad as she is, because they were only married for 10 days and because she'd only known him for 6 months. And she kind of has to, I feel like she has to justify herself to other people, like, he was my husband, he was the love of my life, I'm allowed to be this sad over it. And people kind of, just don't really take her very seriously, and she struggles a lot with depression and grief, and rightly so. But yeah, it was definitely a really beautiful novel. It was very well written. I cried multiple times during this. It was just very heartfelt, and I think that Taylor Jenkins Reid does such a great job of capturing that emotion within a character, and it's just so well done that I think that's what really made this book for me. I would have liked there to have been like a more plot or like a happy ending of some sort, but I guess this is very realistic in a way that there's just like, it's her just trying to move on, like, and trying to be okay with the fact that she is allowed to move on with her life. So yeah, this was a powerful and heartbreaking read. But I did really enjoy it, so I'm glad that I ended up picking it up, and I cannot wait to read more of her novels. So I am back to bring you the last wrap up of the month for December, and in the last couple of days I managed to read another 3 books. I cannot believe how many books I read in December. It is honestly insane. I'm just gonna check how many I actually ended up reading. Oh my goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I read 12 books in December. That is, honestly, I think that's the most I've read ever in a month. That is insane. So I did have a lot of help because I was off work for a week and a half with appendicitis at the start of the month. So I had a lot of time to read, but yeah, I think I was just really dedicated to like trying to smash out my Goodreads challenge, because let's be real, I did not think I had it in me to finish the amount of books I had for the end of the month, for the end of the year. I ended up reading 104 books for 2020, which is insane. So I'm just gonna go talk to you quickly about the 3 books that I read for the last week. So the first one I finished was This Mild Coil by Emily Savada. I really enjoyed this one. I ended up rating it 4 stars. So with this one, we are basically living like this futuristic world where everyone has these panels in their arms, and you can like download code into them, and that will make your genes and stuff immune to certain diseases and things like that. So a lot of things have been cured, but there is this one disease that's out there that's basically turning people into zombies, kind of. And a lot of people have gone into bunkers and are trying to stay safe through there, because there's this company that's offering you to go there, but they kind of want to control you at the same time. So we are following, who are we following? Katerina, and her dad is one of the inventors or one of the coders for the company that's trying to keep everyone safe. And at the start of the book, he is basically kidnapped from the company because he's quit and he doesn't want anything to do with them, because they want to like give out the vaccines and things like that, but like not humanely. So he wasn't very into that, and then they ended up kidnapping him, and she's kind of left on her own for the first couple of years to try and like just survive. He basically says don't go to them, like don't get captured, do everything you can. And then one day this guy shows up to come and collect her, and it's like this whole thing just unfolds. It's absolutely insane. So she finds out that she's like the missing piece to having the virus be effective, and so she needs to find a way to make it accessible for everyone. So she goes on this whole adventure and tries to do it, and finds out that maybe her dad isn't who she thought he was. And yeah, I think this was really interesting. I really enjoyed the aspect of like the genes and the way that they're, and the way that the technology is kind of like infused into them. I feel like that was like a really cool way to do it. I don't think that the sciencey stuff was like over the top. I didn't feel like I didn't understand it. It was explained really well. But there was like, with the typical YA book, it's going to have like some sort of romance or love interest and things like that. And while I did kind of enjoy that, there was like a love triangle. And I'm just not a fan of love triangles, and yeah, it just doesn't vibe with me. This one wasn't so bad because it kind of didn't go how I expected it to go, but I just love triangles as a whole. I'm just like not a huge fan of. And then the second book I read for this week was The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. This is the first book to The Proposal, which I wanted to read, but I found out that it was the second book in the series. So I ended up just reading the first one instead. And this one was really interesting. It's about this girl who meets this guy in this elevator, and he ends up needing a date for a wedding because his girlfriend or whatever they ended up breaking up or whatever, and so he needs a date, and it's his ex-girlfriend's wedding and she's marrying his best friend. So he's like, I can't show up saying that I was going to do a +1 and then not have a +1. So she ends up agreeing because her sister's always on her back, like saying that she needs to like take more chances and get herself out there and more. So she kind of takes that on herself and ends up going on the wedding date, and they kind of really mesh together and it works out really well. But they do live apart, so it was really interesting to have that kind of dynamic where they're having that long distance relationship, but they're not calling it a relationship. They're both very adamant that it's just like this fling, and it's just like this one, it's just like a casual thing, but you can tell that they're very much into the other. I did really enjoy it. The resolution or like the problem and things like that were in here, like it was just a bit, they ended up getting into a fight over the fact that she wanted to know if he was sleeping with other people, and he didn't disclose that information very well. So she wasn't very happy, and they ended up having this fight, and it's just like, yeah, I wasn't very into that, but the rest of it was pretty cute. I think I ended up rating this one like a 4-star, I think, maybe a 3-star. And then the last book I read for the year is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I ended up just deciding to do a reread for the end of this year. I know at the end of last year I read Running with Lions by Julian Winters, and it was just like something to really end my year well so I could start the new year. And I figured I'd just do another reread because I know that I loved this book when I first read it, and it was when I was first starting getting back into reading and things like that. I just wanted to revisit this world, and I don't think it held up to what I remember, because I know that when I first read it I was like just started reading and I hadn't really read that many things, and like this was like amazing when I read it. And now that I've read so many other books, this kind of just it just wasn't where I wanted it to be. I really enjoyed the representation within this novel. The anxiety rep within here I think is really on point for a lot of things, and people can really relate to that. But I found Katha as a main character just to be so annoying and like boring, and I feel like she didn't really have much of a personality. And yeah, I just didn't vibe well with that. And then I think Levi, it was just a bit of a weird character, and I don't think they had a lot of chemistry or anything like that. And I just don't think this was done as well as I remember it. So I ended up rating it 3 stars this time when I rated it 5 stars the first time. And I still enjoyed it. It was good. It was just not everything I wanted it to, or that I remembered it to be, I guess. I had those expectations and they weren't met this time. But it did make me really excited to read Carry On. So I think this month I am probably going to read Carry On for the first time. I made it like 50 pages in, and then I just didn't vibe with it and I just ended up stopping, but I didn't get to the good parts. So I think I really do want to read that and get into that. So this was the last book that I read for 2020, and I think it's a good clean slate for me to start 2021 with. Thank you so much for watching, and I guess I'll see you in my future videos. Bye!